Cases like this is leave you with an uplifting evening, because we're at the end. It's past my bedtime. Yeah. So I want to get on with this. I love golf, and I really got into it a bit. I've played with Bob Sweetman. Yeah, and he's a character out there. He says to me, "Be careful, there's fire ants over there." I said, because I don't worry, I got artificial legs. And he looks over me and says, "I bet you termites scare the hell out of you." And he's one of these guys, whenever I'm putting and it's getting short, he's screaming at me, "Get legs, get legs!" Constantly on like this. Tells me I'm using too much right arm. Good golf advice. But I like going with Bob to golf because I have found that in order to have a higher quality game, I take lower quality people with me. My wife is back there somewhere. Where are you, Gigi? Because you're the star of this show. Ah, right up front here. Yeah, I've been here for 5 years, but 7, 8 years ago, we were driving to Florida, and we stopped at my son's house in North Carolina. He was at the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. And we played a golf game, my wife and I, with my son and my daughter-in-law. And I was having the best game of my entire life. I was 1 over par through 17 holes. We're on the 17th fairway, and I know that I'm going to break par. First time in my life. And I'm excited. So the cart turned quickly, and my wife started to get out of the cart, realized we were taking off, and her leg went under the cart and ran over her. She broke her leg in 3 places. Every night, to this day, I get down on the side of my bed, and I say, "Thank you, Lord, my son was driving that cart." This is a true story. My wife had forgiven him before she hit the ground. If I had done it, I'd still be paying. But I ran over. I was with my daughter-in-law. I ran over, and she's there laying on the ground, and I'm trying to be gentle. And I said, "Come on, get up, walk it off. Walk it off." She says, "I broke my leg." I said, "You didn't break your leg. You just fell. Don't make a big thing out of this. I'm having the best game of my life." I said, "Get up and walk it off." Now, my wife does not use vulgarity. She said, "I broke my blanking leg, you blanking blank." And I'm beginning to think, maybe this is serious. Her cell phone rang. She didn't answer it. I knew it was serious. Had to be something bad. And my son, in his own defense, did point out that on the dashboard of the golf cart, it does say, "Stay seated until the ride has come to a complete stop." So she doesn't like attention. She probably doesn't even like that I did this. But we're on the golf course, and I'm a great husband. I've got her head in my lap, and I'm comforting. You know, you're going to feel better, and she hates attention. And we realized it was serious. So we called the Air Force Base and told them, the lady's hurt on the 17th fairway. And we expected an ambulance, but they sent a fire engine. I figured they heard about her temper. He's going to hose her down. So the ambulance comes, and now we got a fire engine and an ambulance out there for a woman who doesn't want attention. Lights are going. The pro came out, the assistant pro came out in separate golf carts. All the groundskeepers came. And this is the best part. The ambulance crew decided this is a serious break in 3 places. They could tell right away they couldn't take care of it. So they decided to call the city. They sent the fire engine. They sent police cars. We had about 20 vehicles out there with lights going around, and I've got my wife's head in my lap, and I look back up at the tee-off area on 17, and there's these 4 guys saying, if we just hit to the side of them, we should be okay. And do it. And they were really gracious young men. They came up right next to us, dropped their balls, counted 2, and hit from there. So the ambulance takes her. In the ambulance, they said I could go with them. I said, no, I'll be right along. I'll be right there. And Gigi's last words to me as the ambulance goes out, "You're going to finish playing, aren't you?" I said, "It's the best game of my life. I've got to go on." And you know, it's important to be honest and sincere with your spouse, guys. That's probably the most important thing in a marriage. And once you learn to fake that, man, you got it made. So she said it. They said it would be 4 to 6 weeks till she was better. We're on our 7th week, and I'm still doing the dishes, all the laundry, the cooking. I go to Subway every day and get sandwiches. And I'm doing all the work. Rehab was supposed to be 4 to 6 weeks. It's 7 weeks. Now, I know my wife, and I've had this argument with her many times. You don't need to put soap in the washing machine for towels. You've gotten out of the shower, you're perfectly clean, you're just drying off. You don't need soap. Well, she was there, and she got off the couch, and she went to the back of the house to the washing machine. I said, I don't even walk that bad with 2 artificial legs. I said, I really think. So she's back on the couch, and we made a little supper. And I brought her Subway out on a dish. And it was neat because I left food specks from last time on the dish. Her rehab was complete. She was up walking around the next day. There was no problem. And now I must tell you, maybe a little shameful on my part, but I don't think it's that unusual in men to have a midlife crisis. And unfortunately, at 55 years old, which was a few years ago, I met her, someone other than my wife, and got involved. And I was seen around town with her, and I knew that my wife would find out about her. So I decided that I better bring her home to meet my wife. This is a true story, because I handle things well. I brought her home to meet my wife, and I pulled up into the driveway of our 2-bedroom blowaway. And we don't have a screened-in porch. We have a lanai. It sounds so much. I tell my buddies up north, I have a lanai. They have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, I pulled up with her. My wife came out to the 2-bedroom blowaway door, and she looked at me and said, "Where did you find her?" I said, "Do you remember 3 weeks ago when you sent me for bread and milk, and I was gone 3 hours? That's when I bought the '92 Corvette." It was not something I planned on doing. I went to Walmart to get the bread and the milk, and there was this Corvette sitting in the dealership next to it, and it was a Ford dealership. I figured they're going to want to get rid of it. And then, this is totally true. They wanted $15,000 for this Corvette. And I said, "No, I'll give you 9. And they laughed at me, and I explained to them, "You're a Ford dealer. You don't want a smart-looking car like that out here. You're never going to sell one of them junk Mustangs." So they went in, they came out, and they said, "Well, we'll sell it for $9,100. I think they thought they got me. So I bought it, but I was just a little scared to bring it home because money wasn't big with us at the time. And I did bring it home. As I said, she came out and she gave me the look. Every man knows the look. You know what they're thinking. They don't have to put it into words. It's like, and you know what they're thinking. They just won't say it. And I tried to explain to my wife, A Corvette is not what you think. It's an economy car. No, and it's the God's honest truth. On the highway, I can get 33 miles a gallon. When I drove home to Vermont with it, I got 33 miles a gallon when I kept it under 80. And I explained this to my wife. It's a nice car. I said it doesn't need any repairs. It's in perfect condition. It's going to be cost-free. It's that good. And I said, oh my goodness. You sit in that driver's seat or the passenger seat and it just wraps around you. And you get this feeling of comfort like you can't believe. And she just, oh, okay. Well, there was a book written in the 80s. I don't know how many of you remember I'm Okay, You're Okay. Well, my wife wrote the sequel, I'm Okay, You're a Jerk. And she has that other one, Women are from Venus, Men are wrong. And we don't fight. We just give each other the quiet treatment. We've been married. By the way, we've been married 14,005 days today. That's a man who's sensitive to it. And so we didn't fight or anything like that. And I had a few years and the economy went bad. And Gigi and I are sitting at the kitchen table one day and she says, you know, we have too many cars. I said, you're going to sell the Buick? And I got the look. And I said, oh, all right. And in the interest of being sincere and honest, I put an ad in the paper for a '92 Corvette, and people would call, and they'd say, how much do you want? I'd say $1 million. No one ever came looking. So I was out golfing, and I came home around noon, and Gigi announced to me, there'll be a guy here at 2 o'clock to buy the Corvette. Sell it to him. We need the money. Okay. So the guy shows up at 2 o'clock, and you got to remember, with a Corvette, it's a huge front hood. The fenders, the hood, everything goes up at once. So I have a safety zone to speak with this potential buyer. And Gigi is standing on the lanai, watching everything. So the guy is looking at the car, and he says, well, you're going to need new tires. I said, oh yeah. I said, and they're $600 each. I just want to be honest with you. I said, you don't have to worry about the radiator cap. I just did that. That was $150. I said, it's a Corvette. What can you expect, you know? And the guy's thinking about it, and I kind of leaned around the hood of the car, and Gigi was up there like, it's going well. And he said, well, what do you get for gas mileage? I said, gas mileage is good. I can get 8, 9 on the highway. 2, 3 around town if I baby it. It's not bad at all. He said, well, what's the real reason that you're getting rid of it? I said, well, I got to be honest with you. The doctor told me my degenerative back disease was being caused by getting in and out of it. And it hurt so bad. So, I put the hood down and he left. And he walked. And Gigi said, what happened? I said, I don't know. He just got up and walked away. She says, what happened? I said, perhaps he needs a little more time to think about it. And as I told you, we don't fight. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, a.m. And I hear Gigi's up and around walking. And I said, what are you doing at 3 o'clock in the morning? She says, I'm going to Walmart. I said, at 3 a.m.? She says, I'm going to Walmart. I said, well, hold on. I'll go with you. I don't want you going by yourself. And I take my legs off at night, and I leave them by the side of my bed, and where I usually leave them, they weren't. I said, Gigi, where are my legs? She said, I don't know. Maybe they just got up and walked away. I said, Gigi, come on. She said, perhaps you need a little more time to think was gone. And I said, well, I'll drive down, take the Corvette, and I'll go over to Walmart too. And I looked all around the house. Now, I don't know about other men, but I don't last the whole night without getting up. And I didn't want to turn on the light, so what I do is I keep a little flashlight near my bed so I don't bother anyone. So I've only got briefs. I don't wear boxers. I just have the briefs, no legs on, no shirt, and I'm walking around, crawling on my knees around the house. I looked in the closets. I looked everywhere. I was like, 10, 15 minutes is going by. I'm still looking for my legs and I can't find them. I'm just shaking my head. So I go in the kitchen and I got my... and I spotted him. She put him on top of the fridge. Cold. And I'm thinking to myself, this morning can't get worse. And then it does. I get a knock on the door, and a hard knock, and it's, open up, it's the police. I'm on only my skivvies, no shirt, I don't wear the cops in. And they said, open up the door now. So I opened the door, and they walked in, and they looked around, and I said, I'm down here. And the cops walked in, and they looked at me, and it's kind of confused, I think they were. And I said, well, what, did my wife have a car accident or something? I said, no, there's nothing like that. Are you the owner of the house? I said, yes. And they said, okay, we're all set, we'll just take off. I said, hold on, you don't come to somebody's house at 3 o'clock in the morning without a reason. He says, well, your next door neighbor, Ted, called us that there was a naked midget robbing your house.